Imagine waking up on the frontier plains of the Wild West, curled beneath a buffalo hide, your breath a pale cloud in the dawn air. The prairie wind cuts through every seam, rattling the wagon wheels half buried in snow. Your fire has burned down to ash, your canteen is frozen, and the sky stretches grey and merciless above. Out here, the winter cold is not just discomfort, it's a hunter, and you are its prey. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. Super curious where you're all listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Alright, find that cozy spot, take a nice slow breath, and just let your body sink into whatever you're lying on. We're stepping back into the time of the Wild West, when winter tested every ounce of courage and resolve. Imagine breaking ice from a river just to drink, or walking miles through snow with boots stiff as boards. There were no furnaces, no safety nets, just ingenuity, grit, and the desperate will to survive. Tonight, as you settle into your own warmth, remember that once, survival meant meeting the cold face to face and enduring it until spring. You wake before the rooster crows, though he makes no sound this morning. The silence is what rouses you, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, heavy and expectant. When you pull back the quilt, the first thing you feel is the bite in the air. It nips your nose, creeps under the seams of your shirt, and slides cold fingers down your back. You draw in a breath and see it mist out before your face, curling in the dim light. The hearth is black and still. The fire died in the night. You sit up, and the boards beneath you creak with stiffness, the whole cabin contracted by cold. You push your bare feet against the floor and hiss as the frost bites your skin, sharp as pins. Even inside these four walls, the prairie has made its way in, settling on every surface. You reach for your boots by the door and find them stiff, their leather frozen into shape. You rub your thumb along the edge and feel it crack like old bark. They will not go on easy this morning. Stepping outside, the prairie greets you with a glittering hush. Frost blankets every blade of grass, every splinter of fence post, every thread of the clothes you hung out to dry but forgot to bring in. The horizon glows faintly, the sun not yet risen, but the earth already glimmers white as bone. You inhale and the air burns your lungs, sharp as iron. Your breath lingers, a plume rising, before vanishing into the pale sky. The ground crunches beneath your steps, brittle and unyielding. You crouch to touch the soil, once soft with autumn rains, now locked in ice. A rabbit's tracks trace the edge of the garden fence, delicate prints leading off toward the creek. You follow them with your eyes and see how the frost has sheathed the world, turning every weed and wildflower into glass. It is beautiful, yes, but it carries a warning. The prairie has shifted. The season of survival has begun. You look to the fields where corn stalks stand hollow, their husks rattling faintly in the wind. The frost has claimed them, stiffening them into brittle silhouettes. The pumpkins you harvested last week sit stacked by the barn, their rinds cold to the touch, a reminder of the thin line between plenty and hunger. A hawk circles high, its cry cutting across the stillness, but even that sound feels muted, swallowed by the chill. Back inside, your breath follows you like smoke. You strike flint against steel, the spark catching slow, reluctant on the tinder. The kindling is damp, and for a moment you fear it won't catch. But then it does, thin flames licking upward, orange light trembling against the log walls. The fire is no comfort yet, only a promise. You rub your hands, raw with cold, close to the glow, willing the warmth to spread. As the cabin slowly fills with the sound of crackling, you glance toward the window. Frost has feathered the glass in delicate patterns, curling ferns and icy rivers that block out the view. You know beyond it lies the wide prairie, endless and white, stretching farther than your eye can reach. The first frost has spoken. It says, "Prepare, for this is only the beginning." And as you pull your boots on with effort, as you gather your coat and ready your axe for the day's work, You feel the weight of that truth. Winter has arrived on the prairie, not with a shout, but with a whisper that seeps into every breath you take. The frost is only a herald, and the cold yet to come waits with teeth bared, patient and merciless. The day begins with a low moan in the distance. At first, you think it is only the prairie stretching, the grass bending beneath the frost. But then the sound swells, rising and falling, a voice carried across endless plains. The wind is waking. You feel it before it reaches the cabin, tiny drafts, slipping through the seams, curling under the door, brushing your ankles like icy hands. The walls groan softly, as though bracing themselves. You rise with urgency, for you know what this means. The frost was only the warning, the wind is the messenger. Soon it will roar without pause, rattling boards loose, tearing at anything not fastened down. You gather what you can, planks you saved from old projects, hides stretched and cured, a hammer that feels heavy and cold in your fist. Your breath mists in the air as you step toward the windows, each one a fragile line between safety and exposure. The first nail rings out, sharp against the quiet. Metal bites wood, echoing through the cabin like a bell. You drive it deep, shoulders aching, each strike steady, each board pressed tight across the frame. The wind answers with a low whistle, seeping through the gaps around your hammer strokes, testing your work before the true storm arrives. You lean closer, feeling the cold creep through even the smallest cracks, and you press the hide over the seams, pinning it down as best you can. Outside, the sky darkens, though the sun has only just climbed. Clouds race fast, dragged across the heavens, their bellies heavy with snow not yet fallen. You hear it now, the gathering fury, trees bending, branches snapping, the grass flattened into rippling waves of silver. The prairie does not shield you, it is open, wide and merciless. There are no mountains to break the wind, no forests to muffle its howl. It comes straight, sharp, endless, and you are only a small cabin in its path. You move from window to window, hands numb despite the gloves. The boards pile up, nailed into place with hurried strength, the hides tacked over them like second skin. With every nail, every tug, the cabin feels a little more secure, though you know no wood can truly silence the storm. Still, you try. Still, you must. The children huddle under quilts, watching with wide eyes as the walls tremble and the sound grows. The lantern flickers on the table, light shivering with each draft that sneaks past your work. You tell them it will hold, that the cabin will keep them safe, though your heart beats fast in your chest. You feel the walls strain, every gust pushing against you, testing the strength of your hands, your nails, your resolve. At last, you set down the hammer, sweat cold on your brow despite the chill. You press your ear to the wall, listening. The boards hold. The hides flap faintly but remain in place. Outside, the prairie wails like a living thing, yet inside there is only the crackle of the fire and the thrum of your heartbeat. You sit for a moment, hands trembling, shoulders aching. The shutters are fastened, the wind beaten back for now. But you know this is only the first test. Winter has 1,000 ways of finding its way in, and the storm outside is patient. It will wait, it will press, it will return. And you will be here, hammer in hand, listening to the walls whisper under the weight of the wind. The morning comes grey and reluctant, the sky heavy as if the sun itself struggles to rise. You sit near the cold hearth, staring at the pile of blackened ash that was once warmth. The cabin feels hollow without the fire's voice, no crackle, no glow, only the sting of frost settling into every corner. Your breath spills before you in pale wisps, and you know the day cannot begin until flame returns. You gather the tinder with careful hands. Splinters shaved thin from logs, curls of bark stripped from the stump, a handful of dry grass kept in a pouch close to the wall. Each piece feels fragile, yet each holds the promise of survival. You crouch low, flint in one hand, steel in the other, and strike. The sound is sharp, echoing in the quiet cabin. A spark leaps, bright and brief, then vanishes into nothing. You strike again, slower this time, angling the stone just so. Another spark, then another, tiny stars raining down toward the waiting grass. Your fingers tremble, not from fear but from cold. The spark lands, catches, and for a heartbeat you hold still, hardly daring to breathe. A thin thread of smoke rises, faint and wavering. You bend close, lips parting, and blow softly. The ember glows red, then brighter, flickering against the pale strands of grass. It grows, hungrily licking at the bark curls, crackling as it spreads. You feed it carefully, as if cradling a child, adding splinters one by one. The fire hesitates, then roars to life, a small flame trembling in the half-light. Its glow dances across the log walls, golden against the grey morning. Relief washes through you, heavy and warm. The cabin breathes again. The children stir beneath their quilts, eyes following the growing light, hope reflected in their faces. You lay a thicker stick across the flame, hearing it pop and hiss as the frost burns away. The smell fills the cabin, first smoke, resin, the faint sweetness of burning pine. It seeps into your clothes, into your hair, until you carry it like a second skin. The sound follows, steady and alive, the crackle and snap a rhythm older than memory. The cold still presses at the windows, the wind still groans against the shutters, but inside, the fire is a heartbeat. You sit back on your heels, palms stretched toward the glow. Warmth creeps into your fingers, chasing the ache from your knuckles, softening the sting in your bones. You close your eyes and let it seep in, let it remind you that the frost can be fought, at least for now. The fire climbs higher, steady now, strong enough to last. You add another log, hearing the thud as it settles into place, the flames wrapping around it like eager hands. The children shuffle closer, drawn by the glow, their cheeks pink with thawing. You place the kettle near the edge, imagining the sound of boiling water, the comfort of steam rising in the chill air. The fire's first spark is more than flame. It is survival. It is proof that you are not yet beaten, that the prairie winter, for all its cruelty, cannot take everything. As long as you can coax light from stone and steel, as long as the hearth can breathe again, the cabin will stand against the cold, and so will you. The boots wait for you where you left them, slumped against the door like two tired sentries. They are more ice than leather now, their shape held rigid by the night's frost. You crouch to touch them, and your fingers sting at once, the surface hard and unyielding. The soles are stiff as boards, the laces brittle enough to snap. Yet they are the only barrier between your skin and the endless cold of the prairie. You drag them closer to the hearth, where the fire's new warmth stretches in slow fingers. The leather steams faintly, carrying the sharp, sour scent of damp hide. You rub your hands together, waiting, though patience is thin in the morning chill. Every minute without them is a minute lost to the day's labor. Wood must be split, animals tended, paths cleared. Survival does not pause because your boots are frozen shut. At last you wedge your foot inside, the leather resisting every inch. The cold slams against your skin, swallowing your toes, crawling up your heel. It is like stepping into water turned to stone. You push harder, teeth clenched, and the boot yields with a groan. Your foot settles, but there is no comfort, only the sensation of ice stealing your warmth. You stamp against the floorboards, trying to chase life back into your toes, the thud of each strike echoing through the cabin. The second boot is worse. Its tongue is frozen stiff, the edges curled in hard as rock. You pry it open with your fingers, skin burning from the cold, and shove your foot inside. The leather cracks faintly, like old wood giving way. Once both boots are on, you feel heavier, not only in body but in spirit. They protect, yes, but they also remind you of the fight ahead. Every step will carry this weight. You open the door and the prairie breathes out at you, a long sigh of winter air that cuts sharper than any blade. Snow spills across the threshold, powder fine and glistening in the dim light. You step into it, boots crunching down, and the sound is as brittle as glass breaking. The cold shoots up your legs, reminding you that these boots are no shield against winter's cruelty, only a thin line between flesh and frostbite. The path to the woodpile is short, but this morning it feels endless. Each step sinks deep, snow rising over your ankles, seeping through seams no matter how tightly you laced. The boots squeal and creak, leather grinding against ice. Your breath huffs in clouds, rhythm matching the crunch of snow beneath you. Ahead, the woodpile waits, buried under a white shroud. You think of others who walked this same path before you, settlers, wanderers, men who broke trail across a prairie that cared nothing for them. Their boots, too, must have frozen stiff at doors long gone, their mornings filled with the same hiss of breath and crack of leather. It is a reminder that winter has always tested those who dared to live here. By the time you return, arms laden with wood, the boots have softened slightly from the work, warmed by motion. Yet the damp has crept in, soaking your socks, chilling your skin. You kick the snow from the soles, stamping hard against the threshold before stepping inside. The fire greets you, and steam rises once more from the boots as you set them close to the hearth. They will freeze again by nightfall. You know this, but for now, they have carried you through the morning, through the first trial of the day. On the prairie in winter, even frozen boots are a gift, painful, heavy, imperfect, but a gift nonetheless. The fire is alive now, but it eats quickly. Each log burns down to glowing ash faster than you would like, and you know the stack inside the cabin will not last. The woodpile calls, though it waits beneath a blanket of snow, and the thought of that journey makes your stomach knot. Still, there is no choice. Firewood is life. Without it, the cabin is only a wooden box waiting to freeze. You pull on your stiff boots, still damp from yesterday's thaw, and tug your coat close around your chest. The door groans as you push it open, and at once the prairie greets you with a blast of air sharp enough to cut. Snow swirls in, dusting the floorboards, clinging to your lashes. The world outside is white and endless, horizon blurred by drifting flakes that sting your cheeks. You lower your head and step out, the door shutting behind you with a dull thud. The path to the woodpile is not far, just across the yard, beyond the lean-to where tools hang, but today it feels like a mile. Each step sinks deep, snow swallowing your boots past the ankles, clinging with a weight that drags at your legs. You lift and push forward, breath fogging in steady bursts, lungs aching as the cold presses in. The wind whips around you, filling your ears with its hollow roar, making you feel small against the vast sweep of prairie. You pause halfway, leaning against the fence post for a moment's rest. Frost crunches beneath your gloves as you grip the rough wood. The post itself is rimmed in ice, the rails lined with delicate crystals that sparkle even in the grey light. Your chest heaves, breath clouding the air. Around you, the land lies silent, save for the voice of the wind, no birds, no cattle sounds, only emptiness stretching outward. You think of how far the next settlement lies, miles away, and how each family faces this same struggle, hidden in their cabins, bracing against the cold. At last, the woodpile comes into sight, or rather, the mound of snow that hides it. Only the edges of split logs poke through, dark against the white. You kneel, brushing snow away with numb hands, until the wood reveals itself. The logs are stiff, their edges frosted, but solid. You gather what you can, stacking them against your chest, their rough bark biting through your coat. The load is heavy, but the fire will demand more than this before nightfall. You know you will walk this path again and again before winter loosens its grip. Turning back toward the cabin, the wind catches your hood, tugging it like a hand. You bow your head against it, clutching the wood tight, boots crunching a rhythm in the snow. The cabin stands ahead, squat and sturdy, smoke curling faintly from the chimney. That thin line of smoke is a promise, proof that warmth waits inside if only you can carry the burden back. By the time you reach the door, arms aching, cheeks stung raw, you feel both drained and relieved. You drop the wood by the hearth, the thud echoing through the small room. The children stir beneath their quilts, eyes lifting as they watch you feed the fire. Flames leap higher, snapping and crackling, devouring the logs you risked the cold to fetch. The walk is over, for now. But the memory of that white expanse lingers with you, the knowledge that tomorrow and the day after, the woodpile will still stand waiting, buried deeper with each storm. On the prairie, every step to it feels like a battle, and every armful carried back is another hour of life wrestled from the winter's grip. The fire burns strong now, flames twisting high around the fresh logs, but with the strength comes a problem of its own. The chimney draws poorly this morning, clogged perhaps with soot, perhaps with ice, and so the smoke lingers, rising not upward but outward. It fills the cabin in a slow grey tide, curling into the corners, clinging to the rafters where it hangs in heavy shadows. You cough, waving your hand before your face, eyes watering as the haze thickens. The children stir uneasily, pulling quilts over their noses, their voices muffled as they complain of the sting. You cross the room quickly, pulling the iron door of the stove wider, poking at the logs with a stick. The fire crackles louder, sparks leaping, but the smoke only billows harder, escaping as if the cabin itself is too small to hold it. The smell seeps into everything, clothes, bedding, the hair on your arms. It is sharp, acrid, though not unfamiliar. Life on the prairie is married to smoke. It cooks your meals, warms your bones, lights the night, yet too much of it presses down on you like a weight. The rafters collect it, beams darkened by years of fire, now wreathed in a haze so thick you can trace its patterns with your finger. You grab a rag, wrap it around your face, and open the door a crack. The wind screams in, scattering snow across the floor, but it drags some of the smoke out with it. The cold rushes to fill every space the fire cannot reach, gnawing at your cheeks and stiffening your fingers. You slam the door shut again and breathe, chest rattling. Behind you the smoke still clings, curling stubbornly around the rafters like a living thing. For a moment, you stand and simply watch it. The way it drifts upward, folding and twisting, catching what little light seeps through the frosted windows. It paints the air in layers of grey and silver, an unsettling beauty in its patterns. It is easy to imagine shapes in its faces, animals, the shadows of spirits who once walked this prairie before you. In the stillness between coughs, the smoke feels almost like company. You climb onto the stool, reaching up to the chimney's damper with cautious hands. The iron is cold and slick with soot, but you tug at it, shifting it open wider. The wind above seems to answer, a sudden pull drawing the smoke upward. Slowly, the haze thins, dragged toward the chimney, though the rafters will hold its scent for days. You wipe your face with your sleeve, smearing soot across your cheek, and step down, boots thudding against the floorboards. The children peek out from their quilts, eyes wide but calmer now. The room feels lighter, though the smoky veil still drifts near the ceiling. You poke the fire again, watching as flames settle into a steadier rhythm. The worst has passed, but the reminder lingers. Fire, for all its comfort, demands respect. One moment of neglect and the same warmth that keeps you alive can choke the air from your lungs. Later, as the smoke finally clears, only a faint haze clings to the rafters. The beams are blackened, shining faintly where soot has layered thick. You lie back against the wall, exhausted from the morning's fight with both frost and flame. Above you, the rafters vanish into shadows, holding the memory of the smoke like scars. And you know that tomorrow, and every day after, the battle will repeat, fire to fight the cold, smoke to fight the fire, and you in between, caught in the balance of survival. The storm has passed, but what it leaves behind is more unsettling than the wind's howl. When you wake, the world is buried in silence so complete it presses against your ears. No creak of branches, no call of crows, not even the distant cry of coyotes, only stillness, thick as wool. You sit up slowly, quilt falling from your shoulders, and listen harder, but there is nothing. The silence is not gentle. It is heavy, unnatural, the kind that makes you wonder if the world beyond the cabin has been swallowed whole. You push open the door, its hinges stiff with frost, and step outside. The air hits you sharp, stinging your nose, but it carries no sound. Snow lies deep, piled higher than the fence rails, smooth and untouched like a vast white sea. Your boots sink to the ankles with a muffled crunch, and even that fades quickly, swallowed by the blanket around you. The prairie, once alive with whispers of wind and rustle of grass, has been smothered. You pause, breath clouding before you, and scan the horizon. The barn roof juts out of the drifts like the back of a sleeping beast. The woodpile mound has all but vanished, hidden beneath sculpted dunes of snow. The creek, once a ribbon of chatter, is silent too, locked under ice so thick it no longer speaks. Even the sky seems hushed, pale clouds stretched wide and motionless. Back inside, the cabin feels smaller in the silence. The children speak in low voices, as if afraid to disturb something unseen. The fire crackles, but even that sound seems dampened, muted by the weight pressing in from outside. You stir the logs, the iron poker scraping against the grate, and the noise startles you in the hush. It is strange to be startled by your own hands, but such is the power of this silence. Hours creep by slowly. You watch the frost form patterns on the window, glass ferns curling, rivers branching, while beyond them the snow glows faintly, reflecting the dim light of a pale Sunday. Time loses shape in this stillness. You measure it only by the fire's hunger, adding logs, watching them burn, listening for the faint hiss of sap. Each sound is magnified, every whisper a disruption in the frozen air. When you step out again at dusk, the silence has deepened further. The prairie stretches endless, unbroken, a white desert under a fading sky. You strain your ears, desperate for something, an owl, a fox, even the groan of ice splitting, but nothing comes. It is as though the world holds its breath. This silence is not peace. It is warning. It reminds you that nature waits with patience, that beneath the beauty of the snow lies hunger, cold, and solitude sharp enough to cut. You turn back toward the cabin, its smoke rising faint and lonely against the sky. The door closes behind you, shutting out the white stillness, but the silence follows. It lingers in your chest, in your bones, in the way your words falter before you speak. Snowbound silence is the sound of winter's grip, and it teaches you this: the prairie does not need to roar to remind you of its power. Sometimes it only needs to still the world, until all you can hear is the beat of your own heart. The day begins with hunger gnawing at you before you even rise. It is a dull ache in the belly, a weakness in the arms, a hollowness that sleep cannot mend. You lie for a moment, quilt pulled tight, listening to the quiet cabin and the faint rumble of children shifting under their covers. Their stomachs growl too, soft and plaintive, as though the body itself has grown impatient with waiting. You stir the fire back to life and set the kettle on, though you know it holds no feast. Only water, a handful of beans, and the last scraping of cornmeal from the barrel. You run your hand along the bottom of the sack, fingers dusted yellow with the grit, and sigh. No salt pork, no vegetables, no milk, just enough to make broth thin, clear, a shadow of a meal. Still, it is something, and on mornings like this, something must be enough. The water warms, steam rising into the rafters, carrying with it a smell, faint but comforting. The children gather close, their eyes bright, not with joy but with longing. They watch every stir of the spoon, every bubble that rises. One whispers, asking if there will be bread, another if there might be honey. You shake your head gently. Bread is gone, honey long since eaten. Their faces fall, though they do not complain. Hunger has taught them silence. When the broth is ready, you ladle it carefully into tin bowls, portioning it with care so that each receives the same. The liquid splashes thin and pale, beans floating like small islands, grains of cornmeal clouding the surface. You hand out the bowls, and they clutch them tightly, the warmth seeping into their fingers before it reaches their bellies. They sip slowly, stretching the moment, savoring each mouthful, though it does little to fill them. You take your own portion last, sitting near the fire as the broth steams in your hands. It is hot, yes, and it soothes the rawness in your throat, but the hunger remains, deep and insistent. Each swallow feels like a promise broken, nourishment too faint to chase the emptiness away. Yet you drink it all, leaving nothing, because to waste even a drop would be to court despair. Afterward, the cabin settles into a quiet heavier than before. The children lie back down, bowls licked clean, their eyes still searching the shelves as if more food might appear. You busy yourself with chores, stacking the wood, sweeping ash from the hearth, anything to silence your own stomach. The smell of broth lingers in the air, teasing, though the kettle sits empty now. Outside, the snow lies deep, fields barren, stores empty. There is no hidden garden waiting, no hunt to bring down game when the world itself sleeps under ice. You understand, then, that winter is not simply cold, it is hunger made flesh, sitting beside you, whispering in every hollow belly. Thin broth cannot chase it away. It can only hold it off, one morning at a time, until spring dares to return. And so you wait, with empty bowls stacked neatly by the fire, hoping tomorrow will bring more than water flavored with memory. The thirst wakes you before the light does. Your tongue feels thick, lips dry, every swallow rasping like sand down your throat. The cabin air is heavy with smoke and cold, neither fit to drink. You know what waits just outside, against the north wall. The water barrel, a lifeline in better days, a burden in winter's grip. You pull on your coat, boots still stiff from yesterday, and step into the dawn. The air is sharp, burning your nostrils, biting your cheeks. The world glows faint blue under the first light, snow stretching unbroken to the horizon. The barrel stands where it always has, wood staves rimed with frost, iron bands glinting faintly. It leans slightly now, the ground beneath it hardened and uneven, but it remains, always, waiting. You lift the lid, and it resists with a groan, wood frozen to wood. When at last it comes free, the sound is loud in the morning, hush the creak of winter's hand on your only source of water. Inside, the surface gleams hard and glassy, a sheet of ice sealing what you need most. You touch it with the edge of your hand and feel its sting, solid and merciless. The axe waits nearby, its handle rough in your numb grip. You raise it high and bring it down, the blow ringing like iron on stone. The ice cracks, splinters spreading in a web across the surface. You strike again, harder, the sound echoing against the cabin wall. At last, a shard breaks free, water sloshing faintly beneath. You crouch, prying the pieces loose with your fingers, knuckles burning with cold. The water that seeps through is dark and clean, its smell pure and sharp, a reminder of the creek it once flowed from. You fill the tin dipper and lift it to your lips. The cold cuts your teeth, makes your jaw ache, but the relief is instant. Each swallow feels like life itself, smoothing the rawness in your throat, cooling the fever of thirst. You drink deeply, though carefully, knowing too much too fast will bring cramps. When you finish, you fill the bucket, heavy and brimming, and haul it inside. The children wait, eyes fixed on the water, as though it were treasure. They drink in turn, dipping tin cups into the bucket, their hands trembling with eagerness. The sound of their gulps fills the cabin, louder than the fire, louder than the wind outside. It is a sound of survival, raw and honest. When they finish, you cover the bucket and set it near the hearth to keep it from freezing too quickly, yet you know it will harden again before nightfall. Later, as you sit by the fire, the creak of the water barrel lingers in your ears. It is not just a sound, it is a warning. The prairie does not give freely in winter. Every drink must be earned with blows of the axe, with numb fingers, with patience that wears thin as the ice thickens. Tomorrow you will hear it again, the groan of frozen wood, the crack of ice, and you will know once more how close thirst always waits. For now, the bucket stands full, steam rising faintly where the fire kisses its surface. And you sit with a cup in your hands, grateful for water, grateful for the barrel's stubborn gift, even as you know the silence of the prairie is already working to reclaim it. Night falls heavy on the prairie, and with it comes the kind of cold that slips into the marrow of your bones. The fire burns low, its glow faint against the dark corners of the cabin, and though the logs crackle bravely, they are too few to banish the chill entirely. You gather what comfort you can, reaching for the blankets that wait folded at the foot of the bed, patchworks of rags stitched together, hides stiff with age, anything that can be piled between flesh and frost. The first quilt is a patchwork your hands remember more than your eyes. Scraps of old shirts, faded dresses, and worn trousers stitched into squares. Each piece carries memory. A sleeve torn during planting, a hem singed near the hearth. Cloth saved because nothing can be thrown away. The seams pull unevenly, the edges fray, but when spread across your shoulders, it carries a warmth not only of fabric, but of history. You pull it close, listening as it rustles faintly, a reminder that survival is often stitched together from remnants. Over it, you lay a hide, cured long ago, its surface cracked and stiff. The smell lingers still, musky and wild, carrying with it the echo of the animal it once was. It is heavy, pressing down on you with a weight that feels both protective and suffocating. The children burrow beneath it, their faces half hidden, breaths rising in soft clouds. They shift closer together, instinct pulling them to huddle, small bodies sharing what little heat they can. Another layer follows an old woolen blanket, thinned by years, edges unraveling. It scratches against your skin, but the sting is welcome, for it reminds you that warmth is gathering. You tuck it around their shoulders, smoothing it down as their eyes grow heavy. They murmur softly, the sound muffled by cloth and hide, voices fading as sleep takes them. The cabin grows quieter, only the fire speaks now, snapping faintly, sending shadows climbing along the rafters. You lie back, the weight of the blankets pinning you, every breath lifting against their press. The cold still seeps in, nosing through the cracks in the walls, but it meets resistance here. Rag, hide, wool, skin, all layered together in defiance. It is not comfort, not the softness of featherbeds or factory-woven quilts, but it is enough to keep life clinging through the night. As the hours drag on, you wake often, adjusting the layers, shifting closer to the fire, pulling children back beneath the covers when they wriggle free. Each time, the air outside the blankets claws at you, sharp and merciless, a reminder of what waits just beyond. Each time, you are grateful for the weight pressing down again, holding the cold at bay. In the stillness before dawn, you listen to the slow rhythm of breathing beneath the pile. The fire has burned low, only embers glowing faint in the ash, but the blankets hold the night's warmth close. You realize then that survival is not in the strength of one layer alone, but in the gathering of many. Rags and hides, scraps and remnants, together they build a fortress against the cold. And so you drift in and out of sleep, cocooned beneath the patchwork of necessity, while the prairie lies frozen and silent beyond your walls. Morning breaks, though the word feels hollow when there is no color to mark the change. You push open the cabin door, and the world greets you not with light and shadow, but with one unbroken sheet of white. Snow stretches from the threshold to the horizon, so vast and unyielding that it swallows sky and earth alike. The prairie has disappeared, hidden beneath drifts and dunes that roll like a frozen sea. Your boots sink deep, crunching into the crust, but even that sound is muted, absorbed by the blanket that covers all. Each step feels as though you tread on silence itself, the world holding its breath. You lift your eyes to the distance, searching for the familiar, the black line of the fence, the curve of the creek, the dark shoulders of the trees, but nothing remains. The snow has erased every mark of human hand and nature's shape, leaving behind only a blank page. You stand still, the cold pressing hard against your face, and try to grasp the scale of it. The endless white seems to bend the mind, stretching farther than thought can follow. There is no trail, no track, no shadow to guide you. If you walk too far, you could vanish into it, swallowed whole by the sameness. The prairie has become a place where directions blur, where even the sun, pale and distant, seems uncertain of its path. Back at the cabin, smoke curls faintly from the chimney, a thin mark of contrast against the blankness. It looks fragile, a single line of proof that life still clings here. You imagine the view from farther away. A tiny cabin crouched against an ocean of snow, its fire the only color, its walls the only barrier. The thought tightens your chest. Out here, you are small, smaller than you care to admit. You trudge to the barn, each step an effort, snow rising higher against your legs. The animals stir faintly when you open the door, their breath clouding the dim air. Their hay is dwindling, but for now they press close together, their warmth their only defense. You stroke their rough coats, feeling the frost that clings even inside. Their eyes watch you, patient yet pleading, as though they too wonder how long this white will last. Outside again, you pause, listening. There is no wind now, no cry of bird or beast. The whiteness has hushed them all. Your breath rises in steady plumes, the only movement in a world gone still. You could shout perhaps, but even your voice would be swallowed, lost without echo. It is not emptiness you feel, but something heavier, the weight of a land that has stripped itself bare, leaving you alone within it. When you return to the cabin, stamping snow from your boots, the fire greets you with warmth and color. The endless white lies just beyond the door, patient and waiting. It presses against the shutters, piles against the walls, surrounds you with its silence. And you understand that winter has no need to roar or rage when it can rule through sheer presence. The endless white outside is not just a season, it is a kingdom, and for now, you live within its grasp. Night on the prairie comes early in winter, shadows stretching long until they finally swallow the cabin whole. The fire burns low, embers pulsing faintly in the grate, but it is the lantern you turn to now. It waits on the shelf, its glass cloudy with soot, its handle cold to the touch. You lift it carefully, feeling the weight of the little oil left within, and strike the flint. The spark leaps, and after a breathless pause, a flame flickers into being. The glow is small, fragile, no larger than a candle's whisper. Yet at once the room shifts. Shadows soften, faces appear, the rough-hewn walls shimmer faintly in gold. The children gather close, their eyes catching the light, wide and glassy. For a moment, the silence of the snow outside feels less heavy. The lantern's glow pushes it back, not far, not strong, but enough to remind you that darkness can be held at bay. The flame trembles with every draft that slips through the chinks in the wall. It bends and straightens again, a thin tongue of fire trapped in glass. The oil swirls faintly at the bottom, its smell sharp, its supply too precious to waste. You calculate in silence. If you burn it too long tonight, there may be none tomorrow. If you save too much, you risk stumbling blind in the dark, fireless and cold. Survival is always a balance, a barter between what is needed now and what might be needed later. Around the lantern, life stirs again. One child stitches a patch into a torn mitten, the thread glinting faintly as the needle rises and falls. Another traces a finger across the table, following the lines in the wood as though reading a story hidden there. You sit with your hands folded, watching them, grateful that the faint glow can still gather a family together. Outside, the prairie may stretch wide and merciless, but in here, this little light binds you to one another. The flame's glow paints the rafters above, where smoke stains linger from mornings past. It glints off the iron kettle, faintly off the nails hammered into the shutters. Every object in the cabin seems to lean closer to it, as though drawn by the promise of warmth. Even the fire, tired and low, flickers brighter when the lantern's glow brushes its edges. You sit quietly, the lantern between you and the night, and listen. Beyond the walls, the wind has begun again, whispering across the drifts, pressing against the shutters with searching fingers. But the light does not falter. It holds steady, small yet determined, a star caged in glass. You feel its warmth on your cheek, faint but real, and draw your quilt tighter around your shoulders. When at last you turn down the wick, the flame shrinks, bowing low, reluctant to leave. The glass darkens, the shadows stretch long once more, and the cabin sinks back toward silence. Yet even as you settle into the quilts, the afterimage of that faint glow lingers behind your eyes. It reminds you that even the weakest flame can carve out a circle of safety in the vast dark of the prairie night. And sometimes that is enough. The morning greets you not with sound, but with the startling sight of white spread across the quilts. At first, in your half-dreaming state, you think snow has somehow slipped in through the shutters. But when you reach out, your fingers brush not powder, but a thin crust of frost, delicate crystals clinging to the fabric like lace, sewn by winter's own hand. The breath of the night has crept so far inward that even the bedding itself could not escape. You sit up slowly, quilt pulling stiffly where the frost has thickened. Each exhale sends a puff of mist above you, curling into the rafters. The children stir beside you, noses pink, hair dusted faintly with white. One rubs at his blanket, scattering tiny shards into the air where they glitter for a heartbeat before vanishing. The sight fills you with both awe and dread. To find frost on the quilts is to be reminded just how thin the barrier is between the warmth of the hearth and the cold of the prairie night. The fire must have died low while you slept. Embers smolder faintly in the grate, weak and grey, offering no true heat. You crouch beside them, blowing gently, coaxing life from ash. A spark answers, a flicker that grows with patience, and soon a flame curls upward, snapping at the kindling you lay across it. The sound of crackling feels like rescue. Still, as the warmth spreads, the frost lingers, refusing to vanish quickly, as though claiming victory over the night. The quilts themselves are heavy with damp now, the frost melting into their seams. You drape them near the fire, careful not to scorch them, and watch as steam rises, carrying the sharp smell of wet wool and smoke. The children press close, shivering, wrapping themselves in whatever dry cloth remains. You rub their hands, their faces, chasing away the stiffness in their skin, muttering comforts even as worry gnaws at your chest. The cabin shows its frailty in the daylight. Every seam in the wall glitters with icy breath, every nail rimed in white. The windows are not glass anymore, but sheets of frost, curling into feathery patterns that block the view beyond. You think of the endless white outside, patient and merciless, and realize it has found its way in, not just through the shutters or the doorframe, but into your very bed, your very rest. Later, as the fire grows strong, the frost recedes. The quilts soften, the dampness easing though they remain heavy on your shoulders. Yet the memory clings. Tonight, you will lie beneath them again, knowing how close the cold waits. You will wonder whether the frost will return, whether by dawn you will wake once more beneath its glittering hand. Frost on the quilts is more than an inconvenience. It is a message written in silence and cold. It whispers that winter does not rest while you do, that it seeps through cracks and shadows, reaching even the places where you should be safest. And as you tuck the children in again, you know you will sleep with one ear open, listening for the fire, praying the frost does not find you so easily next time. The prairie has its own way of measuring distance. In summer, it is the smoke rising from another family's chimney, the faint sound of a cow lowing, or the clatter of a wagon wheel carrying across the fields. In winter, it is silence or the lack of it. For days you have listened, waiting for some sign from the cabins that lie scattered across the white, but now there is nothing. The neighbors are quiet. Too quiet. You step outside, boots crunching in the snow, and scan the horizon. The world is flat and endless, a sea of white, broken only by fences and the dark ribs of barns half buried in drifts. Where smoke once curled into the sky, there is only pale emptiness, no grey lines twisting upward, no proof of fires fighting the cold. You listen hard, straining for voices, for the faint chop of an axe, but the wind gives you nothing, only stillness. It is a heavy kind of silence, different from the snowbound hush of nature. This is the silence of absence of human voices gone missing from the winter chorus. You remember the last visit, weeks ago, when a neighbor shared a sack of potatoes, when laughter rang briefly by the hearth. You promised to return the favor when the time came. But the time has passed, and no knock has come at your door. Inside the cabin, the children notice too. They whisper of the family down by the creek, of the brothers who used to tramp through the snow with rabbit snares in hand. "Why haven't they come?" one asks. You do not answer. Instead you stir the fire, watching sparks climb the chimney, hoping somehow they carry a message into the white. You think of walking the mile to check, but the storm has buried the path, and the cold bites hard enough without the wind at your back. To set out now would be to gamble warmth for knowledge, safety for certainty. You weigh it in your mind, the choice sitting like a stone in your chest. To stay is to endure the worry. To go is to risk not returning. At dusk you step outside once more. The sky glows faint with the fading sun, shadows stretching across the drifts. Again, no smoke. The prairie feels emptier than ever, a land hollowed by silence. You close your eyes, listening to your own breath, imagining for a moment that you can hear theirs too, faint and distant, carried on the wind. But when you open your eyes, the horizon is blank. Back in the cabin, you sit near the fire, the children asleep under quilts heavy with damp. The silence presses in, louder than the crackle of the flames. You wonder if the neighbors sit as you do now, huddled and waiting, their own voices swallowed by the storm, or perhaps the silence has claimed them already, leaving only snow to guard their doors. Neighbors gone quiet on the prairie, it is a sound more chilling than the wind itself. It tells you that survival is not promised, that cabins can fall silent without warning, that one morning you too might wake to find your fire dead, your voice stilled, your home swallowed by the white. The prairie has been silent for days, snow muffling every corner of the world. But tonight, as the fire burns low and the children drift in uneasy sleep, a sound cuts through the stillness. It begins as a thin cry, sharp and wavering, carried on the wind like a question. Then another joins it, then another, until the air outside the cabin trembles with the voices of coyotes. You sit upright, listening. The sound is eerie, neither near nor far, as if it comes from every direction at once. Their cries weave together, rising in ragged harmony, breaking into yips and howls that chase one another across the frozen plain. The hair on your arms prickles beneath your sleeves. Coyotes are not strangers here. You've heard them in summer, skulking at the edges of the fields, laughing in the dusk. But winter sharpens everything, even their voices. Tonight their song is hunger given sound. You move to the window, frost feathering the glass, and press your ear close. Outside, the moonlight spills across the drifts, turning the snow into a sea of silver. Shadows shift at the edge of the barn low, quick shapes that vanish when you strain to see them. The animals inside stir uneasily, hooves thudding against boards, the sound muffled but frantic. The coyotes circle, unseen yet certain, their cries rising and falling like waves against the silence. The children whimper in their sleep, their dreams pierced by the noise. You stoke the fire higher, letting the flames roar in the hearth, though you know the coyotes will not be driven away by smoke and light. Still, it steadies your hands, gives you something to cling to. You check the rifle by the door, fingers brushing its cold barrel, though you hope you will not need it. Ammunition is precious. Every bullet is a promise you cannot waste. The cries grow louder, closer, until you feel them in your chest. They echo across the rafters, seep through the cracks in the shutters, crawl beneath the quilts where the children hide. It is not just sound, it is presence. The prairie itself seems to breathe with it, a chorus of hunger wrapping the cabin. You imagine yellow eyes gleaming just beyond the door, teeth bared, paws sinking into snow as they pace and wait. And then, as suddenly as it began, the noise fades. One voice falls silent, then another, until only a single cry lingers in the distance, stretched thin and lonely. The barn settles, the animals quieting into nervous snorts and shuffling hooves. The cabin holds its breath, listening for more, but the night grows still again. The silence feels deeper now, heavier, as though the howls carved emptiness into the air. You sit back, staring into the fire, heart still quickened. Coyotes have always belonged to this land, but in winter their song carries more than menace. It is a reminder that hunger prowls everywhere outside in the drifts, inside in hollow stomachs, in every living thing that fights to see spring. Their cries are a mirror of your own struggle, sharpened into sound. The sound of coyotes fades, but it lingers in your bones. It tells you that winter is not endured alone. Out there, in the endless white, other creatures fight too, calling their hunger into the night, reminding you that survival is a chorus no one asked to join. The woodpile burns down faster than you'd like, each log swallowed by the fire in a crackle and hiss. The hearth is greedy, demanding more with every hour, and so you take up the axe. Its handle is worn smooth where hands before yours have gripped it, but today it feels rough, biting into your palms, even through gloves. The steel head is cold, its edge dulled by long use, yet sharp enough to do the work that must be done. You step outside, the world blinding in its whiteness. The air snaps at your face, and your breath fogs before you as you make your way to the chopping block. A drift leans against it, half burying the stump in snow, but you clear it with a few sweeps of your arm. The logs wait in a crooked pile nearby, their bark frosted, their weight heavy with cold. Each one is a promise of warmth, though it does not feel that way as you heft the first onto the block. The axe swings high and comes down with a hollow thud, splitting the log clean. The sound rings out across the frozen yard, startling in the silence, echoing back from the barn walls. You set another and another, the rhythm building lift, strike, split. The muscles in your shoulders ache, your breath grows ragged, sweat forming even in the bitter air. The axe bites, wood groans, splinters fly, and slowly the pile of split logs grows. But with the rhythm comes pain. The gloves do little to soften the handle's bite, and soon your palms burn. You stop to look and find the skin rubbed raw, the beginning of blisters rising, red and angry. You flex your fingers, stiff from both cold and strain, and know they will only grow worse. Still, you lift the axe again. Blisters can heal. Firewood cannot split itself. Hours pass in this slow battle. The wind shifts, carrying with it the distant call of something wild, but you pay it little mind. Your focus is narrowed to the block before you, the log balanced, the axe raised. Each strike sends a jolt through your arms, rattling your bones. The pain grows sharper, but so does the need. The thought of the children huddled under quilts, the memory of frost clinging to their blankets, drives you harder. By midday, the snow is littered with shards of bark and splinters, the ground scarred with your labor. The pile of wood has grown, though not as much as you had hoped. Your hands throb, blisters broken now, blood seeping into the fabric of your gloves. You pause, chest heaving, and lean on the axe, its head buried in the stump. The sky above is grey, heavy with clouds, and you know another storm is coming. You gather the split logs in your arms, staggering back to the cabin. Each step sinks deep, boots heavy, breath raw in your throat. Inside, the fire leaps as you lay the new wood down, flames devouring it hungrily. The warmth spreads, chasing back the cold, and for a moment the pain in your hands feels worth it. Axes and blisters, this is the price of survival. The prairie demands sweat, skin, and strength, and it takes them without apology. You sit by the fire, palms burning, and understand that tomorrow you will return to the block, blistered hands gripping the axe once more. Because the fire will always hunger, and so must you. The rafters creak faintly as the wind presses against the cabin walls, and above the hearth the hooks wait. Iron bent into curves, hammered long ago, they hold the remnants of autumn's work, slabs of salted meat, leathery and dark, swaying gently in the draught. You lift your eyes to them often, for they are both comfort and torment. Comfort, because they mean the family will not starve tonight. Torment, because there are fewer pieces each week, and the space between them grows wider. You stand on the stool, reaching up, your fingers brushing against the rough surface of the nearest slab. The salt has hardened it, a crust white against the brown flesh. You pry it free from the hook, the smell of preserved fat sharp in your nose. It is not fresh, not tender, but it is food, and food is worth more than gold in a season like this. You carry it down carefully, as though holding something sacred. On the table, the knife scrapes against it, shaving off thin slices. The meat resists, stiff and stubborn, the blade catching on sinew. Each strip curls away like bark from a log, narrow and small, but enough to flavor the pot. You set them aside, counting, measuring. There must be enough for everyone, but not so much that tomorrow finds the hooks bare. That is, the balance, always the balance. The children gather near, noses wrinkling at the sharp smell, but eyes fixed with hunger. They know the taste, even if it is tough, even if it takes long chewing. You drop the slices into the kettle, water hissing as the meat sizzles before sinking. The broth darkens slowly, the steam rising rich with salt and memory. For a moment, the air itself feels warmer, filled with the promise of a meal. As the pot simmers, you glance upward again. The hooks sway slightly, shadows dancing against the rafters. You remember the work of salting in autumn, slaughtering hogs, curing the flesh, packing barrels with brine. The smell of smokehouses, the long hours with knife and salt sack, the neighbors gathered to share the labor. It was hard work then, but you did it with laughter, with harvest still heavy on the fields. Now those memories feel like a dream. All that remains are these strips of meat, hanging like the last notes of a song. When the meal is ready, you portion it carefully. Each bowl holds broth, beans, and a single strip of meat floating like treasure in the depths. The children chew slowly, savoring the toughness as though it were fine beef. Their eyes close as the salt stings their tongues, the warmth spreading into their bellies. You eat last, gnawing at your piece until your jaw aches, grateful for every bite, though it barely eases the hollow inside. Later, when the bowls are stacked and the fire burns low, you look once more at the hooks. Only a few slabs remain, shadows against the rafters, their outlines thinner than before. They are guardians of survival, but their numbers dwindle. Each night you take one down, you wonder how many more nights they will last. The salted meat hooks whisper the truth that winter teaches best. What you saved yesterday is what keeps you alive today. And when the hooks stand empty, you will learn what hunger really means. The fire glows steady, its warmth licking across the cabin walls, but it cannot fill empty stomachs. Hunger lingers like a shadow in every corner, most of all in the faces of the children. You see it when they sit by the hearth, knees pulled to their chests, quilts draped loosely around narrow shoulders. Their cheeks are pale, their lips cracked, and their eyes, those once bright eyes, now carry the hollow look of want. They do not speak of it often. Children learn quickly what silence means in winter, yet their glances betray them. When the kettle steams with thin broth, their gazes follow every movement of the ladle, every drip from the spoon. They watch your hands with a quiet intensity, as though willing them to make more appear, as though hunger itself might be filled by looking. You portion carefully, bowls balanced in trembling hands, and their eyes widen with hope. But when the bowls empty too quickly, that hope dims, leaving hollows deeper than before. You remember their laughter in autumn, when the corn was gathered and apples filled the barrels. Their faces were full then, cheeks flushed from chasing one another through stubble fields, eyes bright with the joy of plenty. Now, in winter's grasp, those same eyes seem older, heavier. They carry questions they do not dare ask. Will there be enough tomorrow? Will the meat hook still hold? Will spring come soon enough? At night, when the lantern burns low, you tuck them beneath layers of rags and hides. Their small bodies curl inward, conserving heat. Their breaths shallow as sleep claims them. You study their faces in the faint glow, shadows deepening the hollows around their eyes. They look like tiny echoes of themselves, as if winter has carved pieces away, leaving only outlines behind. You smooth their hair, whisper promises that tomorrow will be better, though the words taste heavy on your tongue. The next morning, the pattern repeats. They wake hungry, shuffle to the table, wait in silence for what little can be offered. Their eyes follow every scrape of the knife, every scoop from the sack. When you hand them their portions, they smile faintly, not because they are full, but because they are grateful for anything at all. Gratitude and hunger sit side by side in their gaze, and it breaks you to see both. Outside, the prairie is merciless, white and vast, giving no thought to the children it starves. The snow covers the fields where food once grew, buries the trails where game once ran. You glance toward the horizon and wonder how many other families stare into the same hollow eyes across their tables. Survival is a chorus of silent children, waiting, watching, enduring. By evening, when the fire burns low and another day ends, the children sit by your side, their eyes catching the last flickers of flame. Hollow though they may be, there is still light there, faint but present, a stubborn spark that winter cannot take. You cling to it, that glimmer, knowing it is all that carries you through the long nights. Children's hollow eyes are the truest mirror of hunger. They remind you of what winter steals first, not food, not warmth, but the fullness of innocence. And they remind you of what must be fought for most fiercely, the chance to see those eyes shine bright again when spring finally comes. The fire has burned low, but you cannot let it die. Midnight finds you seated on the stool by the hearth, shoulders wrapped in a quilt, eyes heavy with weariness. The cabin is silent save for the crackle of embers and the faint rasp of wind against the shutters. The children lie huddled together, their breaths rising in small clouds that fade into the rafters. Everyone sleeps but you. Tonight is your watch. You rise, stiff from stillness, and stir the fire. Ash shifts, glowing red beneath the black crust, like hidden stars smoldering in a dark sky. You lean close, coaxing them with careful breath, feeding them, kindling, one splinter at a time. Flames leap up, reluctant at first, then stronger, their light pushing the shadows back. You sit again, watching the logs catch, the rhythm of sparks as steady as a heartbeat. The hours stretch long in the silence. Each creak of the cabin feels louder in the night, the rafters groaning under snow, the shutters rattling against their nails, the faint drip of melting frost where the fire's warmth reaches. You listen for more than that, for the soft pad of paws near the barn, for the crack of ice on the creek, for any sound that warns of danger in the frozen dark. The prairie does not sleep, and neither can you. Your hands trace the rifle resting by the door. The metal is cold beneath your fingers, heavy and sure. You pray you will not need it, yet its presence steadies you. Beyond the walls, coyotes prowl and hunger drives men as well as beasts. Winter has a way of sharpening desperation. In the still hours, you imagine shapes moving just beyond the glow of the fire, shadows gathering in the white expanse, watching, waiting. To fight the heaviness in your eyelids, you pace the room. Each step is soft against the boards, careful not to wake the children. You glance at them often, their faces peaceful in the firelight, though hollows linger beneath their eyes. Their quilts rise and fall with each breath, and you know the rhythm depends on you. If the fire fails, the frost will creep in, settling over them as it did before, weaving itself into their blankets, their hair, their lungs. The thought keeps you awake more than fear ever could. The night deepens. You pour water into a cup, watching steam rise faintly, though even the water tastes of smoke and iron. You sip slowly, letting it warm your throat, eyes fixed on the flames. Time feels strange here, stretched and heavy. Minutes drag into hours, each one measured by the crack of wood splitting in the hearth. At last, through the frosted window, a faint light touches the horizon. Not dawn yet, but the promise of it. You stir the fire once more, adding the last log from the pile by the hearth, knowing the next armload must be fetched when morning comes. You pull the quilt tighter around your shoulders, exhausted but steady. The watch is nearly done. The midnight watch is a lonely duty, but it is what stands between the living and the silence outside. You know you will sit again tomorrow night, and the night after, guarding flame and family alike. For on the prairie in winter, survival is not won in great battles, but in these small hours when one pair of weary eyes keeps the cold at bay. The night is still when you hear it, a crunch in the snow beyond the shuttered window. At first you think it the shifting of ice, the groan of timber pressed by wind, but then it comes again. Slow, deliberate, too heavy for a rabbit, too soft for a man. The animals in the barn stir, hooves scraping against wood, their unease carried to you through the silence. You rise from the hearth, heart thudding, and reach for the rifle by the door. The fire burns low, its glow faint and wavering, just enough to brush the floorboards in gold. In the shadows between, your mind begins to shape images. You lift the latch gently, open the door a crack, and peer into the frozen night. The prairie gleams silver under the moon, snow stretched wide and endless, and there, etched across the drifts, moves a shadow. The wolf is no more than a blur at first, gliding along the edge of the barn. Its body is low, its steps measured, its head turning with patient caution. The moonlight catches its back, fur rimmed in white frost. It pauses, nose lifted, scenting the air. For a breathless moment, you meet its eyes across the distance, twin glimmers pale as ice. They hold no malice, only hunger. You shut the door softly, pressing your back against it, breath quick and shallow. Inside, the fire pops, a log splitting with a sharp crack, and you glance toward the children. They sleep, oblivious, their faces soft in the dim light. You grip the rifle tighter, torn between waking them and letting them rest. In the end, you remain silent. Better their dreams hold warmth than the fear crouching outside. The wolf circles, its shadow sliding across the cabin walls as it passes near the window. You hear the faint scrape of its paws against the frozen earth, the whisper of its body brushing snow. The barn creaks as the animals stomp nervously, the sound of their fear rising and falling like a warning bell. The wolf waits, tests, listens. It knows what lies inside the warmth of hay, the blood of beasts penned tight, the promise of survival. You pace the floor softly, keeping the fire alive, every sense straining. Shadows flicker across the rafters, smoke curling in uneasy patterns. The rifle feels heavy in your hands, but you do not fire. Ammunition is too precious to waste on threats that do not yet breach the door. And besides, the wolf has not attacked. It lingers, patient, as if reminding you that this land is its home as much as yours. Hours pass in uneasy watchfulness. The shadow moves and fades, reappears farther out, then vanishes entirely. Perhaps it has gone, slipping back into the endless white. Or perhaps it waits, crouched in silence, unseen but present. When dawn breaks faint over the prairie, you open the door again and find only tracks, deep, steady prints circling the barn, leading off into the horizon. The wolf's shadow lingers in your mind long after the prints are gone. It is not just a beast you fear, but the hunger it carries, a hunger that mirrors your own. In the struggle for survival, there is little difference between you and the creature pacing the drifts. Both watch the fire, both guard the young, both carry hollow bellies through the winter. The wolf leaves no sound behind, only the memory of its shadow against your walls. And you know it will return, for hunger always does. The morning begins with a strange stillness, the kind that presses on your chest like a held breath. The air is heavy, the horizon blurred, and you know before the first flakes fall what is coming. A blizzard does not announce itself with thunder or roar. It builds in silence, gathers in the distance, and then arrives all at once, like a wall dropped from the sky. By midday, the first snow drifts down, soft and steady, swirling in lazy circles. You watch from the window as it thickens, the flakes growing larger, faster, as though the sky itself is unraveling. Soon the prairie vanishes. The fence posts blur, the barn fades, and the world beyond the door is swallowed whole. You step outside for wood, and the wind slams into you, fierce and unrelenting, filling your ears with a roar that drowns all else. Snow lashes your face, sharp as needles, clinging to your coat, your lashes, your very breath. You brace against it, head bent low, boots sinking deep, each step a battle. The woodpile is only yards away, yet it feels unreachable, hidden behind a curtain of white. You stretch out your arm, and even your hand vanishes before your eyes. The world is gone, replaced by the blizzard wall, thick, suffocating, endless. You gather what logs you can, fumbling with numb fingers, and stagger back, the wind pushing like a living thing. When the cabin door shuts behind you, the silence inside feels deafening by comparison. The children huddle near the fire, eyes wide, quilts wrapped high around their shoulders. They listen to the storm battering the shutters, the nails groaning under the strain. Snow rattles against the walls like thrown sand, and the rafters creak as though the roof itself is bending. You stoke the fire higher, knowing it may need to last longer than you can manage. If the storm traps you for days, the wood will burn down to nothing. Still, you keep the flames strong, for tonight warmth is worth more than rationing. Through the cracks in the shutters, faint streams of snow slip in, dusting the floorboards in white. You sweep it back with your boot, but it returns, relentless. The lantern glows faintly, its light competing with the fire, though both feel small against the storm's fury. Outside, the prairie is erased, but you can still feel its weight pressing, hear its voice roaring through every seam of the cabin. Time dissolves in the storm. Hours pass with no measure but the fire's hunger and the wind's scream. The children doze and wake, their faces pale in the flickering light. You sit by the door, rifle across your lap, though you know nothing human or beast will brave the blizzard wall tonight. Still, the watch calms you, gives purpose to the waiting. When at last the storm begins to ease, it does not stop suddenly. The roar softens, the snow falls slower, the walls groan less. You crack the door open, and the world outside is unrecognizable. Drifts climb high against the barn, the fence lost beneath white dunes, the horizon still hidden. The blizzard has reshaped the land, as if the prairie itself were erased and drawn again. The blizzard wall is not just snow and wind, it is power. It reminds you how small you are, how fragile the cabin stands against the weight of sky and storm. And it reminds you that winter does not simply arrive, it conquers. The storm has passed, but it has left its weight behind. Snow lies thick on the prairie, smooth as carved stone, and on the cabin roof it settles like an unwelcome guest. At first you hear only the hush of wind dying in the distance, the soft hiss of drifts settling against the walls. Then, faint but clear, comes another sound, a long, low groan from above. The roof complains like an old man rising from his bed, timbers straining, nails creaking, each sound sharp against the quiet. You glance upward instinctively, though the rafters show nothing but their usual shadows, blackened by smoke. Still, you feel the weight pressing down pounds upon pounds of snow, each flake harmless alone, but together a burden heavy enough to break. You rise quickly, pulling on your boots, their leather stiff and cold. The children stir under their quilts, eyes wide at the noise overhead. One asks if the roof will fall. You force a steady voice as you answer, though the truth weighs in your chest. Not if we help it. You grab the shovel, iron handle biting against your hands, and open the door. The world outside blinds you with its brightness. Snow piles high against the walls, forcing you to climb upward as much as outward. Each step sinks deep, your breath heaving in clouds that freeze to your scarf. The roof looms above, sloped and sagging faintly, crowned with drifts so thick they look like dunes on a frozen sea. Again the timbers groan, louder now, as if urging you to hurry. You find the ladder, half buried, and drag it free with numb hands. Planting it against the eaves, you climb slowly, shovel strapped across your back. The rungs creak beneath your boots, but you keep going, the roof calling out with each step, a chorus of wood and strain. At the top, you haul yourself onto the snow-laden slope, knees sinking at once into the heavy crust. The work begins. You drive the shovel into the drift, muscles burning as you heave great clumps over the edge. They fall with muffled thuds, vanishing into the drifts below. Again and again, you strike and lift, each motion carving the burden smaller, each throw a small victory against collapse. The wind stings your face, snow clings to your coat, but you keep on. Below, the children watch from the doorway, their faces pale, their eyes following every movement as though the roof itself were in your hands. The sound changes as the snow lessens. The groans soften, timbers relaxing, the cabin breathing easier. By the time you clear the last section, the roof stands lighter, stronger, its cries stilled for now. You pause, chest heaving, leaning on the shovel, looking out across the endless prairie. The land is silent again, but the silence feels earned, as though you've fought back winter just a little. Climbing down, you stamp the snow from your boots and step inside. The children rush to you, their small hands cold but eager, and you pull them close. The fire crackles, the roof above holds steady, and the cabin feels safe once more. The roof groans still linger in your ears, though. They remind you of winter's patience, how it piles weight upon weight until even wood and iron bow. And they remind you of your own duty, to rise, to lift, to keep the roof above your family strong, no matter how heavy the snow becomes. The morning meal begins not with plenty, but with what little remains. You lift the iron pan from its hook, its surface blackened by years of fire, and set it over the faint glow of the embers. The kettle is nearly empty, the sacks long since scraped to their seams. What you have left is not grain, not flour, not meat, only ashes, soft grey powder gathered from the hearth. The children watch from beneath their quilts, eyes wide but silent. They know the routine, though they do not understand the desperation behind it. You scoop the ashes into the pan, mixing them with a little water, stirring slowly until the paste thickens. The smell is sharp, bitter, filling the cabin with the tang of smoke and despair. Still, you stir, because hunger does not leave room for pride. The spoon scrapes against the iron, loud in the quiet morning. You remember the days when the pan hissed with fat, when bacon sizzled and flapjacks browned. Those sounds once filled the cabin with laughter, with the promise of full bellies. Now, the scrape of wood on metal feels like mockery, a reminder of what winter has taken. When the mixture firms enough to hold, you divide it into portions, pressing them flat. They do not look like food, more like the coal that burns in the stove, but you know they will fill the stomach, if not the spirit. You serve them out carefully, one piece for each small hand. The children chew slowly, their faces twisted at the taste, but they eat because there is nothing else. Their lips darken with soot, their teeth crunch on grit, and their eyes turn hollow with the knowledge that this is survival now. You take your portion last. It tastes of bitterness, of char, of smoke that clings to your tongue long after you swallow. Each bite scrapes against your throat, leaving you thirsty, though water itself is rationed carefully, chipped from ice and melted in a kettle. You chew and swallow, reminding yourself with each motion that this is what stands between you and hunger's deeper ache. When the meal is done, the pan is left with streaks of black paste, hardened and brittle. You scrape it clean with your knife, saving every crumb, every smear, because tomorrow you may need even that. The ashes stain your fingers grey, the smell clinging to your clothes, mingling with the smoke that already fills the rafters. The children retreat beneath their quilts again, bellies not satisfied but dulled. They close their eyes, drifting toward a sleep that is more escape than rest. You sit by the fire, staring into the embers, watching as they collapse into more ash, the same ash you will scoop again tomorrow. The cycle repeats, shrinking smaller each day, until you wonder what will remain when even the fire cannot give you food. Ashes in the pan are not a meal, but they are a measure of endurance. They whisper the truth of winter's grip, that survival sometimes tastes of bitterness, that strength is built not on plenty but on what little can be gathered. And as you wipe the pan clean, you tell yourself that so long as there is a fire to burn, there will be ashes to eat, and so long as there are ashes, there will be life. The creek once ran lively, its chatter filling the summer air with a song that guided you through the fields. In autumn, it slowed, cooled, and whispered softer, but still it moved. Now, in the heart of winter, it lies silent. You trudge through the snow toward its bend, breath clouding before you, boots groaning with each step. The land is white and endless, but the creek's course is marked by the bare willows, their branches heavy with frost. When you reach it, you see not water but a sheet of ice, pale and unbroken, stretched like glass across the bed. The surface gleams in the weak light, smooth and merciless. You kneel, setting down the bucket, and press your glove to it. Cold burns through at once, sharper than fire, numbing your fingers in seconds. You know the water is there, locked beneath, but the barrier is thick, a stubborn prison built by nights colder than memory. The axe feels heavy in your hand, its handle rough, its edge dulled by woodcutting. You raise it high and bring it down. The crack rings out across the frozen banks, a sharp sound that startles a crow into flight. Shards leap outward, scattering like broken glass. Again you strike, and again, each blow jarring your arms, rattling your teeth. The ice splinters, white veins spreading across its surface, until finally it gives way with a hollow groan. Water rises through the break, dark and pure, its surface trembling in the bitter air. You scoop quickly, dipping the bucket, careful not to spill. The water smokes faintly, warmer than the air, though still biting cold. You lift the bucket, its weight pulling at your shoulders, and carry it back, your steps slow and deliberate on the snow-crusted trail. Behind you, the hole in the creek steams, already edging with frost, eager to close again. Back in the cabin, the children gather as you set the bucket near the fire. They peer into its depths, their eyes wide, as though you've carried home treasure. You pour some into the kettle, watching steam curl as it warms, the promise of tea or broth enough to soothe their hollow faces. The rest you cover with cloth, knowing that by morning it will begin to freeze again, even by the hearth's glow. As the firelight dances across the bucket, you think of how easy it once was to drink from the creek hands plunged in, water splashed to lips, the cool taste taken for granted. Now every swallow comes with the memory of swinging an axe against ice, of numb fingers and splintered shards, of work wrestled from silence. Later, when the children sleep, you step outside again. The moon glints on the creek, and your breath stills at the sight of it. Already the hole has sealed over, a thin layer of ice spread across as though mocking your labor. Tomorrow you will return, and the next day, and the next. Each time the creek will resist, and each time you will strike until water yields. Frozen creek water is more than thirst quenched. It is proof that survival means fighting for even the simplest gift. And on the prairie in winter, nothing is more precious than the dark, cold water hidden beneath a prison of ice. The barn was once a place of noise and warmth, a shelter alive with the sounds of animals shifting in their stalls, hooves clattering against boards, lowing and snorts rising in the straw-scented air. Now, as you push the door open, only silence greets you. The hinges groan, the wood creaks, and the emptiness inside breathes back at you. The barn feels hollow. The smell is the first thing you notice. It is not the rich, earthy mix of hay and manure, but the faint, dry scent of straw almost gone to dust. The bales are few, stacked thin along the wall, their edges fraying, their color faded to pale gold. You run your hand across one and feel how light it has become, how it crumbles easily under your touch. What was once feed for months is now little more than scraps, barely enough for a week. The animals stand quietly, ribs showing beneath their hides. The cow lifts her head slowly, eyes heavy, chewing not with vigor but with weariness. She noses the empty trough, searching for what is not there. The goats shift on thin legs, their bleats faint, almost questioning. Even the chickens, once lively and sharp-eyed, huddle in corners, their feathers puffed against the cold, their clucks soft and sporadic. You walk the length of the barn, boots crunching on straw spread thin across the floor. Each step echoes, the sound magnified by emptiness. In summer, this space would be crowded, voices and movement filling every corner. Now the rafters loom high above, shadows nesting where swallows once darted, their beams heavy with silence. You hear the wind slip through the cracks in the boards, a low moan that deepens the sense of vacancy. At the feed bin, you scrape the bottom, gathering what handfuls you can. Grain dust clings to your fingers, too little to fill even one trough. You divide it carefully, scattering it thinly, hoping the animals will not notice the lack. They crowd forward anyway, eager, their hunger plain in the way they lick at the wood after the feed is gone. You stand and watch, sorrow pressing against your chest, knowing they cannot last long on so little. You think of the labor that built this barn, the neighbors who raised its frame in a single day, the sweat that sealed its boards, the pride you felt when the first animals were led inside. Back then it stood as a symbol of plenty, a promise of safety against the elements. Now it feels like a tomb of memory, holding only shadows of what it once was. As you close the door behind you, the sound echoes again, louder in the emptiness. The barn settles back into silence, its hollowness untouched. The animals remain within, quiet and waiting, their breath misting faintly in the dim light. You walk back toward the cabin, carrying with you the image of their eyes, patient but resigned, a mirror of your own fear. The hollow barn is more than a building emptied by winter. It is a reminder that survival is not just measured in your own hunger, but in the lives tethered to yours. And as the snow deepens, you wonder how much longer the barn will echo with silence before it falls completely still. Once, the fields were alive. In summer, they rippled like a golden sea, corn rising high, wheat bending in the wind, every stalk whispering against its neighbor. Even in autumn, after the harvest, the fields carried sound, the rustle of dry husks, the chatter of crows, the creak of wagon wheels carrying the last loads home. But now, in the heart of winter, the fields are silent. You step outside, boots crunching faintly on the packed snow, and gaze toward the land that once promised plenty. The fences mark the edges still, but everything within lies under white. The stalks that remain stand brittle, skeletal, their heads bowed, their shadows long and thin in the pale morning light. No wind stirs them, no bird alights upon them. They are monuments to what was, not what island. The silence presses on you as you walk the length of the fence. Even your own footsteps feel swallowed, muffled by the snow. You pause and listen, expecting some answer, the caw of a crow, the flap of wings, the distant crack of ice splitting on the creek. Nothing comes. The fields do not answer. They sleep, heavy and unmoving, the soil beneath locked away by frost so deep you know no plow could break it. You remember bending over this earth with your hands in the soil, sweat dripping, back aching, yet heart full. You remember the green shoots pushing upward, the relief of seeing them grow, the satisfaction of harvest. Those memories return now like voices, faint echoes of a time when the land spoke to you daily. But winter has smothered them all, leaving only quiet. The children ask when the fields will wake again. They point at the snow, wondering aloud if food hides beneath. You shake your head gently, though the answer weighs heavy. Nothing grows now. Nothing can. The silence is not a pause. It is a barrier, thick and unyielding, holding the earth hostage until spring. By midday, the sky grows dim, clouds stretching across the horizon, their weight echoing the stillness below. You climb the small rise where once the wheat grew tallest, hoping to see farther, but the view offers nothing. Only white, flat and endless, broken by the black lines of fences half buried. You speak aloud, softly, as if testing whether your own voice can survive here. The sound falls flat, carried nowhere. Returning to the cabin, you glance back at the fields once more. They seem almost watchful in their silence, as if they wait for you to accept their terms. They give nothing now, but they remind you of what they can give when the thaw returns. Their silence is not death, only slumber, though in the heart of winter it feels the same. Inside, by the fire, you cannot escape the image of those empty acres. The silence follows, heavy as the snow itself, reminding you that for now, the land belongs not to you but to the cold. The silence of the fields is the sound of waiting, a long, unbroken breath held until spring, and all you can do is endure until the land exhales again. The cabin is quiet when night falls, but it is not the kind of silence that comforts. It is broken often, harshly, by the sound of a cough. At first it comes soft, a small bark muffled beneath quilts. Then another joins it, deeper, shaking the chest it escapes from. Soon the air is filled with the rattle of lungs straining against the cold. You sit by the fire, stirring the logs, listening helplessly. The flames burn steady, throwing warmth against the walls, but it does not reach far enough. The cold seeps in through the shutters, settles in the rafters, creeps into the very breath of those huddled on the floor. The children curl tighter under the hides, their cheeks flushed not with health but with fever. Each cough racks their small bodies, bending them forward, their hands clutching at their chests as though they could claw the sickness free. You rise and fetch water from the bucket, pouring it into tin cups. Steam curls upward as you set them by the fire to warm. When the children sip, the heat soothes for a moment, loosening the rasp, easing the pain, but it is only a moment. Soon the rattle returns, echoing through the cabin, rising and falling like a grim chorus. The sound is heavier than the storm's howl, more frightening than the wolf's cry. It reminds you how thin the line is between survival and loss. A cough in summer is nothing. A cough in winter is a shadow creeping closer. You lay your hand on a forehead, feel the heat there, and know the fever is working as hard as the cold. Both forces pull, and you stand helpless between them. You remember the herbs once kept in jars on the shelf, roots boiled into teas, leaves crushed for their oils. They are gone now, used up in the first weeks of sickness. No healer walks the prairie in winter. No neighbor braves the drifts to bring aid. All you have is water, warmth, and patience feels like waiting for something you dare not name. The night stretches long. The coughing wakes the little ones, who stir and whimper, their wide eyes frightened in the lantern's glow. You hush them, press them back into quilts, stroke their hair. The sound never truly stops. It rises in one, falls in another, rattles the air like chains shaking in the dark. Even when silence comes for a few minutes, you hold your breath, waiting, knowing it will return. When dawn creeps pale through the frost on the windows, the cabin feels smaller, pressed in by exhaustion. The coughs still echo, weaker perhaps, but no less heavy. You stoke the fire again, pour water into the kettle, force yourself to move, though your body longs for rest. You cannot rest, not while the rattle lingers. The rattle of coughs is winter's reminder that survival is not only about food and fire. It is about breath itself, fragile and fleeting, stolen easily by the cold. And as you sit, listening, you know that each breath is both a victory and a prayer, whispered against the silence waiting just beyond. The pantry is bare again, shelves stripped to wood, the salted meat hooks nearly empty. Hunger presses sharper each day, and so you do what families on the prairie have always done when the cold grows cruel. You trade. But in winter, when drifts rise higher than fences and the wind buries trails, trading feels less like neighborly barter and more like dealing with shadows. You bundle yourself against the cold, scarf wound high, boots stiff with frost, a sack slung across your shoulder. Inside the sack are the last things you can part with: a handful of beans, a strip of cloth, a small carving knife worn dull. They are not much, but perhaps enough to bring flour or a bit of pork or oil for the lantern. You step outside, the air biting deep, the world white and soundless. The path to the neighbor's cabin is buried, but you know it by memory, each fence post a ghost rising from the snow. The wind whispers around you, tugging at your coat, carrying your breath away in grey clouds. The horizon is blank, the land featureless. Only the thought of trade keeps your feet moving, one step after another, until the cabin comes into sight. Its chimney smokes faintly, a thin sign of life in the endless white. You knock once, twice, and wait. The door opens slowly, revealing a figure in shadow, face hidden by the hood of a coat. No greeting comes, only a nod, and you step inside. The cabin smells of smoke and grease, warmer than your own, but no less heavy with silence. The neighbor does not speak much, few do in winter, when words feel like luxuries. Instead, the trade begins. You set your sack on the table, spreading its contents. Eyes study them, measuring worth. A tin of lard is set down in return, a small sack of cornmeal beside it. The exchange is quick, precise, as though both of you are afraid the cold will seep in through the door and steal what little you have. Neither dares ask how long these rations must last. Neither dares mention the cough in the corner or the silence of other cabins where no smoke rises anymore. When it is done, you nod thanks and step back into the storm. The sack feels heavier on your shoulder, though the food inside is still meager. You glance once over your shoulder, seeing the door close slowly, the shadow withdrawing back into the cabin. For a moment, you wonder if you will ever see them again, if the snow will keep them hidden by the time you return. The walk home feels longer, the wind grows sharper, the world dimmer, yet you press on, clutching the sack close. Inside are not just rations, but hours of survival, days perhaps purchased by what you gave away. When the cabin door shuts behind you and the fire warms your face, the children lift their eyes with hope. You empty the sack onto the table, their hands reaching eagerly, their eyes shining. The trade has bought you time. Trading with shadows is not measured in fairness or kindness, it is measured in survival. Each exchange is a flicker of life passed from one family to another, a silent pact carved against the endless cold. And as you eat that night, you know winter watches still, waiting to see who has enough to last and who will vanish into the white. The morning begins with a sound you do not expect, silence where there should be noise. The chickens usually greet the dawn with restless clucks and the scrape of claws against frozen straw, but today the yard is still. You step outside, boots sinking into snow, and see at once that something is wrong. The coop door hangs crooked, pushed open against the drift. Tracks scatter across the yard, sharp prints leading away into the white. Your heart sinks before you even look inside. The coop is cold, feathers scattered across the floor, a smear of blood dark against the pale straw. One chicken is gone, taken in the night. The others huddle in the corner, eyes wide, feathers puffed, their silence a kind of testimony. You kneel and run your fingers over the prints in the snow. They are not the padded marks of a fox or the narrow stride of a weasel. These prints are longer, heavier, human. You follow them a short distance, the trail weaving toward the tree line before vanishing into drifts. The wind has begun to erase them already, filling each step with snow. Whoever came took care not to linger, moving fast, leaving behind only feathers fluttering like scraps of paper in the yard. You stand in the cold, jaw tight, and feel the hollow anger rise. A beast kills for hunger, but a man steals knowing what it costs his neighbor. Back inside, you stoke the fire, though the warmth does little to settle you. The children ask what happened, and you answer softly, telling them only that one bird is gone. Their eyes grow wide, their hands clutching quilts tighter. They understand more than you wish. They know how thin the meals have become, how precious each egg, each scrap of meat. To lose even one chicken is to lose days of survival. Through the day, you repair the coop, hammering the door straight, nailing the hinges tighter. Your breath fogs the air, your fingers stiff as you work, but you keep at it because you must. The The chickens watch you with nervous eyes, their clucks faint, as though they too sense the danger that lingers. You spread more straw, set more boards, but no hammer or nail can mend the truth. Hunger drives men as surely as it drives wolves, and the prairie teaches all creatures to take what they can. That night, as the fire burns low, you think of the thief. Was it a neighbor, gaunt and desperate, slipping through the snow with hollow eyes and an empty belly? Was it a stranger passing unseen across the prairie, leaving behind nothing but stolen life? You cannot know, and the not knowing gnaws worse than the loss. The chicken is gone, but the unease remains. You lie awake, listening for footsteps in the snow, for the creak of the door, for any sign that shadows move again outside the cabin walls. The children sleep, but you do not. Hunger has a sound now, and it is the silence left behind when a chicken's cluck is gone. The stolen chicken is more than food lost, it is trust broken. It is proof that winter makes thieves of men, that the cold spares no dignity when the belly aches too long. And as the wind rattles the shutters, you understand that survival is not only a battle against the cold and the snow, but against the desperate hands of those who walk the prairie beside you. The prairie wind has always been a companion, sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh, but never absent. In summer it carries the smell of grass and dust, in autumn the scent of harvest. But in the heart of winter it becomes something else entirely. Tonight it bares its teeth. You hear it before you feel it, an edge in the sound, a sharper note threaded through the steady moan around the cabin walls. Then it strikes, a sudden gust that rattles the shutters and sends snow swirling against the door like thrown sand. The fire flares as the draft slips through the seams, scattering sparks that leap and die in the hearth. The children stir under their quilts, murmuring, as if the wind's voice creeps into their dreams. You rise and press your hand against the doorframe. The wood trembles beneath your palm, vibrating with the fury outside. The sound is not a howl now, but a grinding, gnashing rhythm, as though the prairie itself has grown a mouth. Each gust feels like it is chewing at the cabin, testing for weakness, biting at every crack where light or warmth might escape. The shutters groan, the rafters creak, and you imagine teeth cold and unseen gnawing their way closer. You step outside once, to fetch more wood, and the wind strikes at once, slashing across your face with blades of ice. It steals your breath, forcing it back into your lungs until you cough. Snow rises in clouds, sharp-edged and stinging, clinging to your lashes, filling your ears with its hiss. You bend low, pushing against it, each step a fight. The woodpile looms like a ghost through the white, half buried, half frozen. You claw at it, drag what you can into your arms, and stagger back, the wind snapping at your heels. Inside again, you slam the door shut, leaning against it, chest heaving. Your cheeks burn with frost, your fingers ache, and the sound of the wind fills the cabin as though it followed you in. The fire crackles louder, trying to drown it out, but the gnashing continues, relentless. The children's eyes peek out from under their quilts, wide and glistening. One asks if the wind will break through. You do not answer right away. You feed the fire first, piling logs high, then kneel and tell them the truth in softer words. The cabin will hold, but we must hold too. The hours stretch long, each gust a reminder of how thin the walls are, how fragile the line between safety and ruin. You sit by the fire, rifle across your knees, though no beast prowls tonight but the wind itself. It claws and bites, its teeth unseen but felt with every rattle of the shutters, every groan of the roof. When dawn comes at last, the light reveals drifts piled high against the walls, sculpted into sharp ridges by the storm's fury. The land is unrecognizable, torn and reshaped, but the cabin still stands. You step outside, the wind softer now, though its bite lingers in the air. The silence that follows feels like victory, though you know it is only a reprieve. The wind's teeth have not broken you, but they have left their marks. The shutters hang looser, the walls creak louder, and your own breath comes heavier. On the prairie, the wind does not need claws or fangs. Its teeth are made of cold and snow, and every winter it comes back to bite. The night is long, and the fire has burned low. Shadows stretch across the cabin walls, broken only by the faint glow of embers. Outside, the wind prowls, dragging its claws across the shutters, rattling the door like a thief testing the latch. You sit by the entrance, rifle across your knees, eyes fixed on the faint line of frost creeping along the window frame. Sleep tugs at your lids, but you dare not close them. Winter does not forgive the unguarded. Your hands grip the rifle tight, fingers stiff inside worn gloves. The metal is cold, leaching heat from your skin until the ache turns to numbness. You shift your hold, flexing your fingers, but the cold bites deeper each time. Soon your hands feel more like wood than flesh, unresponsive, heavy, frozen to the weapon meant to protect you. You wonder if, when the moment comes, you will even be able to pull the trigger. Beyond the door, the night is alive with sounds you cannot name, a crunch in the snow, a faint whine of wind through the barn slats, the uneasy stomp of hooves as the animals stir, restless in their pens. You lean forward, listening hard, heart beating louder than the noises themselves. Every sound might be nothing, or it might be everything. Hunger drives men. Hunger drives wolves. Both can come at night. The rifle is heavy in your lap, its barrel catching the dim light of the lantern. You remember the weight of it in warmer times, steady and sure, when your hands were strong and quick. Now it feels like an anchor dragging you down, each second longer a test of endurance. You shift again, rubbing your palms along the stock, but the numbness lingers. The cold has its grip, and it does not let go. You glance at the children, bundled under their quilts, their faces half hidden. Their breathing is soft, fragile, each rise and fall of their chests a reason to keep holding the rifle. It is not only the fire you guard tonight, it is them. Every ache in your hands, every sting in your fingers is a price you pay willingly, though it wears you down. A sound outside jolts you upright, a sharper crunch, closer this time. You raise the rifle, the movement clumsy, your hands slow as though carved from stone. You steady your breath, ears straining. The silence that follows is heavier than noise, pressing on you until your chest tightens. Minutes crawl by before you lower the rifle again, the tension lingering in your arms. Perhaps it was only snow falling from the roof. Perhaps it was more. You will never know. The night drags on. Your hands remain frozen, clamped to the rifle like a part of it. Pain returns in waves, needles of sensation stabbing through the numbness. You welcome it, for pain at least means you still feel, still live. You sit straighter, blinking against the pull of sleep, determined to outlast the dark. By dawn, pale light creeps across the frosted windows. You lower the rifle at last, fingers stiff, aching as you pry them from the stock. The fire sputters low, the children stir, and outside the prairie lies quiet once more. The danger, real or imagined, has passed for now. Frozen hands on the rifle, this is the cost of vigilance in winter. To guard through the night with numb fingers and aching eyes, knowing that survival depends not on comfort, but on the will to endure until morning comes. The first light comes faint, seeping through frost-covered glass, pale and reluctant. Dawn on the prairie is no sudden brilliance, it is a slow unveiling, the sky bruised with grey, the snow glowing faintly as though lit from within. You rise from the stool by the hearth, weary from another night of broken sleep, and move to the window. Beyond it lies the same endless white drifts, heaped high against the fence, fields silent beneath their frozen shroud. Yet still you wait for the light, because it means you have lived to see another day. The children stir beneath their quilts, their breaths shallow but steady. You crouch to check the fire, feeding it one more log, watching the flames lick upward. The warmth is meager, but it pushes back the cold enough to make your bones ache less. Then, with the fire alive, you sink to your knees on the cabin floor. It is not ritual so much as necessity. In winter, prayer is less about ceremony and more about survival. Your words are quiet, spoken into the still air, half whisper, half breath. You do not ask for riches, nor for ease. You ask for one more day of endurance, one more night without the roof giving way, one more morning with the children still breathing under their quilts. Your hands fold, cracked knuckles press tight, and you bow your head. The wood beneath you is cold, but the act steadies you, gives weight to hope. Outside, the wind sighs low, carrying with it the distant cry of a crow. It sounds strange in the silence, almost like an answer. You raise your eyes to the window again. The horizon brightens slightly, clouds thinning, and the sky shifts from grey to the faintest wash of gold. Dawn takes hold, stubborn and fragile, like a flame coaxed from damp tinder. You feel it warm your face through the glass, not with heat, but with reminder that even winter cannot stop the turning of the Sunday. The children rise one by one, their hair tousled, their eyes heavy. They see you still kneeling, and without words they shuffle closer, small hands pressing together, their voices joining yours. It is not the prayer of a church pew, not the echo of hymns under vaulted rafters, but it is enough. Their whispers rise into the beams, mingling with the smoke stains, soft as snowflakes drifting upward. For a moment the cabin feels less hollow, less small. You finish in silence, opening your hands as though releasing the words into the air. Then you rise, brushing frost from your knees, and set about the day's work. The fire must be tended, water fetched, wood split, all before the storm returns. Yet you move with a steadier heart, carrying the dawn's fragile light inside you. The prayer at dawn is not about miracles. It is about endurance, about facing another day when every night feels like it might be the last. It is the quiet bargain you make with the prairie, that you will keep rising, keep tending, keep holding fast, so long as the sun keeps coming back. And this morning, as gold threads through the frost, you believe it will. The cupboard stands nearly bare, its shelves dusted with flour too scant to gather, its corners hollow where sacks once sat heavy. You open it slowly, as though you might find more if you move gently enough. But only one thing remains, a single biscuit, hard as stone, wrapped in a scrap of cloth. It was saved once, set aside for later, but later has arrived. You lift it carefully, almost reverently. It is small, no larger than your palm, browned unevenly from the last baking weeks ago. Its edges are brittle, its center dense. When you press it with your thumb, it does not yield. Still, it smells faintly of grain, faintly of salt, and in this season of hunger, that faintness is enough to quicken the heart. The children watch you from their quilts, eyes following your every move. Their faces are quiet, not pleading, but hopeful in the way only hunger can shape hope. You place the biscuit on the table, its weight louder than any words. A knife waits beside it, though you know it will not cut clean. You pick it up and hold it firm, the blade sawing slowly through the hardened crust. Crumbs scatter, precious and few, and you sweep them back together with your hand. 4 pieces lie on the board now, uneven but shareable. You hand them out one by one, placing each in a waiting palm. The children clutch their pieces close, almost afraid to eat too quickly. When they bite, the crunch is sharp, their jaws working hard to soften it. Their eyes close as they chew, savoring the faint taste as though it were feast enough. You take your own piece last, chewing slowly, the biscuit scratching your throat, yet filling your belly with something more than water or broth. For a few minutes the cabin feels full. The sound of chewing, of small sighs of contentment, replaces the quiet of hunger. But soon it fades. The crumbs are gone, the taste lingers only faintly, and the silence returns. The children lick their fingers, gather the tiniest bits left on the table, and then curl back under their quilts, their eyes hollow still. You sit a long while staring at the empty cloth, folded neatly beside the knife. It feels heavier empty than it ever did full. The last biscuit was not just food, it was memory of better days, of ovens warm with baking, of sacks still half full, of neighbors sharing fresh loaves after harvest. Its absence now is a mark of the season's cruelty, a reminder that what little was saved has finally been spent. Outside, the prairie lies quiet, the snow unbroken, the fields asleep beneath their icy cover. There will be no more flour until spring, no more rising bread, no more biscuits browned on iron. The cupboard waits, hollow and accusing. You rise, brushing crumbs from the table into your hand, and eat them too. They are bitter, dry, gone before you can taste them. The last biscuit is gone, but its memory lingers, pressing harder than hunger. It reminds you of the thin line you walk now each day, a balance between what remains and what has already vanished. And as the wind rattles the shutters, you understand, winter has taken the biscuit, but not yet the will to endure. The snow has fallen heavy through the night, covering the prairie in a sheet of white so smooth it seems untouched by life. Yet when dawn breaks pale and grey, you see them tracks pressed into the drift just beyond the cabin door. At first your heart leaps, for tracks mean movement, and movement might mean game. Rabbit, deer, even a fox, any would be blessing enough to chase. You pull on your stiff boots, sling the rifle over your shoulder, and step into the cold. The air bites sharp against your cheeks, but hope pushes you forward. The tracks are clear, each print sharp-edged against the snow, heading north toward the creek bed. You follow them, your breath heavy, boots sinking with each step, the sound muffled by the drifts. The trail winds through the yard, past the barn, and out across the open prairie. At first, it looks promising. Steady prints, close together, the kind left by something light but quick. A rabbit, you think, or maybe a fox nosing for scraps. You quicken your pace, heart thudding, imagining the weight of fresh meat in your hands, the smell of it roasting above the fire. But as the horizon stretches and the cold seeps deeper into your bones, doubt creeps in. The tracks weave oddly, circling wide, doubling back on themselves. Sometimes they scatter, as if the creature had leapt, startled by some unseen sound. You crouch to study them, breath steaming above the prints. They are not deep enough for deer, not small enough for rabbit. The shape blurs with each step, snow already filling them in, erasing the edges. Still you follow, because to stop would be to admit defeat. Hunger sharpens your will. Each step takes you farther from the cabin, deeper into the white, the world shrinking until it is only you, the rifle, and the endless trail before you. The silence grows heavier, the horizon flatter, and the tracks stretch on unbroken. At last you crest a small rise and pause, chest heaving. The prints scatter here, branching in 3 directions. One path loops back toward the creek, another angles toward the trees, the third vanishes into a drift so deep you cannot see where it ends. You follow each a short way, but none lead to their maker. No rabbit bursts from cover, no fox's tail flashes against the snow. Only emptiness greets you, the tracks fading, swallowed by wind and time. You stand there a long while, staring at the marks pressed into the white, then at the horizon where they vanish. Hope feels like a cruel trick, dangled just far enough to pull you into the cold, only to dissolve into nothing, tracks to nowhere. The snow has played its game, leading you out, testing your strength, reminding you that not every sign means survival. When at last you turn back, the walk home feels longer. Your legs ache, your fingers burn inside stiff gloves, your breath rasps in the frozen air. By the time the cabin comes into view, smoke rising faintly from the chimney, you carry nothing but exhaustion. Inside, the children lift their eyes, searching for what you did not bring. You shake your head softly, setting the rifle aside, and they turn back to the fire, quiet but understanding. You sink into the chair, boots heavy with snow, heart heavy with emptiness. Tracks to nowhere, the prairie leaves them often, a reminder that not every path holds promise, not every trail leads to life. Sometimes it leads only to silence, and the long walk back with hunger still gnawing at your belly. The fire crackles, its glow spreading across the cabin walls, but warmth alone cannot fill the hollows carved by hunger. Supper comes late. after a long day of scraping together what little remains. The kettle steams faintly, thin broth swirling with more water than meat, its smell more memory than promise. You ladle it into bowls with careful hands, portioning each as though dividing treasure. The children gather at the table, their quilts still draped across their shoulders, eyes fixed on the bowls. They take their places without chatter, without laughter. The silence weighs heavy, broken only by the scrape of spoons against tin. Their faces lean into the firelight, pale and thin, cheeks sunken, lips cracked from the cold. Their eyes, once wide and bright, now seem larger, only because the flesh around them has receded. You watch them lift spoonfuls to their mouths, sip slowly, stretch the meal as far as it will go. They chew as though there is something to chew, though you know there is little more than broth flavored by a sliver of salted meat. Still, they eat with care, as if each mouthful must be savored. The sound of their spoons tapping the sides of bowls fills the cabin, echoing louder than laughter ever did. When your turn comes, you lift your own bowl, its warmth seeping into your hands. The broth tastes of smoke and salt, thin but grounding, enough to ease the sharp edge of hunger, but not enough to satisfy. You sip slowly, eyes drifting to the children. The firelight flickers across their faces, highlighting the pale skin stretched over bone, the hollows beneath their eyes. Their stillness unsettles you. Children should wriggle, laugh, spill broth on their chins. These ones only eat quietly, steadily, as though too tired for play. One sets her spoon down, bowl still half full, and folds her hands in her lap. You ask softly if she is finished. She nods, though you know it is not fullness that stops her. It is weariness, the kind that comes from bodies running low on strength. You take the bowl gently, setting it aside, though your heart aches at the thought of wasted broth. When the meal ends, the bowls are scraped clean, not a drop left behind. The children return to their quilts by the fire, curling together like a litter of pups seeking warmth. Their faces glow faintly in the light, pale still, but softened by the quiet relief of food, however small. You sit with them, the silence pressing close, and stare into the flames. The pale faces at supper stay with you long after the fire dims. They remind you of how thin the margin has become, how close hunger sits at your table each night. Yet they also remind you of endurance. For pale though they are, those faces still turn toward the fire, still take what is given, still rise each morning to meet another day. Winter has stripped them of color, of fullness, but not of life. And as long as there is a flame in the hearth and a scrap to place in the kettle, those pale faces will sit at supper again, waiting for spring to bring the flush of warmth back to their cheeks. The morning begins with cold so deep it gnaws at your bones before you even leave the quilts. You rise, teeth chattering, and crouch at the hearth where the embers have died into grey dust. The cabin feels hollow without flame, breath hanging heavy in the air, every board groaning under the frost that presses in. You reach for the tinder box, knowing what must be done. Fire is life, but this morning life does not come easily. You gather the kindling, splinters shaved thin, curls of bark, a handful of dry grass kept tucked away in a sack. They should be enough. You strike the flint against steel, the spark flashing bright, but the grass only smoulders, refusing to rise. You blow gently, coaxing it, watching smoke curl upward. The ember glows, flickers, and then dies, leaving only a trace of ash. You try again. Spark, smoke, a faint glow. You lean close, lips trembling against the cold, and blow until your chest aches. For a moment, it seems to catch, a thin flame licking at the bark. Hope flares in you, hot and sharp, but then the flame sputters, falters, and vanishes. The cabin sinks back into silence. Behind you, the children stir under the quilts, their coughs rattling the air, their eyes opening with the question they do not speak. Why is there no fire? Your hands shake as you strike again, this time harder, the flint biting deep, sparks leaping wild, a few land glowing fiercely for a heartbeat before winking out. The wood feels damp, its surface heavy with frost. You rub your palms together, trying to will warmth into them, but your fingers are stiff, clumsy, more wood than flesh. The air in the cabin feels colder by the second, seeping through every seam, pressing against your back as though urging you to hurry. You kneel there for what feels like hours, breath clouding before you, lungs burning with the effort. Each attempt ends the same: smoke, sputter, silence. The children huddle tighter, quilts pulled over their heads, their faces pale. One whispers softly, asking if the fire has left you for good. You answer with silence, because words are too heavy. At last, desperation forces you outside. The wind slashes across your face, the snow crunching beneath your boots as you search the pile for something drier, something the frost has not claimed. You find a log split thin, its inside still dry, and carry it back with trembling arms. Splinters fly as you shave it down, filling the hearth with fresh curls. Once more you strike the flint, once more sparks fall, and this time they take. The flame begins small, a fragile tongue, quivering as though uncertain. You shield it with your hands, feeding it slowly, whispering as if words might help it grow. It spreads to the bark, then to the splinters, then at last to the log itself. The fire catches, crackles, grows, filling the cabin with golden light. Relief washes through you so hard it brings tears. The children crawl from their quilts, faces softening, hands stretched toward the warmth. The cold still lingers in the rafters, but the fire has returned. It will live, at least for today. The fire that would not catch has taught you what flame truly means. It is not just heat, it is hope, fragile as tinder, stubborn as life itself. And when it finally burns, it is more than survival, it is a victory wrestled from the jaws of winter. The storm had raged all night, hammering the cabin with fists of wind and drowning the prairie in walls of snow. You thought it would never end, the roar of it, the endless hiss of flakes against the shutters, the groan of timbers strained under the weight. But then, just before dawn, it changes. The howl softens, the pounding ceases, and the world outside slips into a strange, uneasy calm. You open the door, a crack, and step into the stillness. You have entered the blizzard's eye. The air is quiet, almost tender, as though the storm has paused to catch its breath. Snow lies high against the walls, sculpted into ridges and curves as smooth as glass. The sky above glows faintly, a pale dome where the clouds have parted. Light filters down soft and silvery, giving the land an otherworldly glow. For the first time in days, you hear nothing, not the wind, not the groan of the roof, not even the creak of trees. It is silence so deep it feels unnatural. You walk a few steps from the cabin, boots sinking into snow that swallows you nearly to the knees. Each movement is slow, careful, the cold sharp against your face. Your breath fogs into the still air, rising lazily, unhurried by the wind. The prairie stretches flat and endless, but it looks strange now, reshaped by the storm. Fences are gone, buried beneath drifts. The barn is half hidden, its roof just a dark hump in the sea of white. The world is both familiar and unrecognizable, as though winter has redrawn it in one night. The children peer from the window, their faces pressed against the frosted glass. You lift a hand to them, offering reassurance, though the sight unsettles you as much as it awes you. This calm is not mercy. It is a pause, a waiting. You know the storm will return, fiercer perhaps than before. The blizzard's eye is no gift, it is a reminder of how small you are in the face of the sky's power. Still, you take the chance it offers. You shovel snow from the door, carve a narrow path toward the woodpile, gather what you can before the wind wakes again. Each shovel stroke feels like work against time, every log dragged inside a victory. The silence makes your labor louder, the scrape of iron, the thud of wood, the rasp of your breath filling the still air. You pause often, glancing at the horizon, waiting for the first sign of the storm's return. When it comes, it is subtle, a faint stir in the air, a whisper brushing across your cheek, then another, stronger, sharper. The sky darkens, the pale dome closing, the silence breaking as the first gust rattles through the drifts. You hurry back inside, slamming the door as snow begins to whirl again, rattling against the shutters like thrown sand. The cabin shudders as the storm resumes its grip, howling louder, hungrier, as if angered by your brief reprieve. You sit by the fire, chest heaving, listening as the world outside dissolves once more into chaos. Yet you carry the memory of that stillness, that strange, fragile peace. The blizzard's eye is not a place of safety. It is a glimpse into the storm's heart, a reminder that even fury has pauses, and that survival lies in using every quiet moment the winter allows. For weeks, their cabin had stood silent. No smoke curling from the chimney, no prints in the snow, no voices carried on the wind. You feared the worst, that winter had swallowed them whole, as it had others. Yet one morning, as the frost still clung to the windows and the fire burned low, you hear it, the sound of boots crunching outside, slow but steady. You rise, heart thudding, and open the door. There they stand, gaunt and hollow, but alive. Their coats hang loose, patched with rags, their eyes sunken deep into their skulls. The father leans heavily on a stick, his breath ragged in the cold. Behind him, the mother carries a bundle strapped to her back, her steps slow but unbroken. 2 children follow, smaller than you remember, their faces pale and pinched, their bodies shivering beneath thin quilts draped like cloaks. They look like ghosts at first glance, shadows of the neighbors who once laughed and worked beside you. You usher them inside quickly, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around them like a long-lost friend. They sink near the hearth, stretching hands toward the fire, their fingers trembling. The children say nothing, only stare at the flames as if they might devour them whole. The mother smiles faintly, a crack in her weary face, and thanks you with a voice nearly gone. The father only nods, his eyes closing for a moment as though the weight of survival has finally given him permission to rest. You set before them what little you can spare, a bowl of broth, a crust of bread saved from yesterday. They eat slowly, carefully, but the hunger in their movements is unmistakable. Every sip, every bite is treated like treasure. When the children finish, they lick the bowls clean, eyes darting as though hoping for more. You wish you could give it, but your own shelves are thin, your own cupboards hollow. As they warm, the story comes in fragments. The storm that buried their door, the weeks spent in silence, trapped by drifts. The food gone sooner than expected, the cough that took hold, shaking the walls with its rattle, the nights spent listening to the wind, wondering if anyone else still lived in the white. They had stayed as long as they could, waiting for mercy that never came, until finally they rose and walked, step after step, through the endless snow toward the only smoke they remembered seeing. Yours. You listen, your chest heavy, your eyes fixed on the children curled by the fire. You think of the pale faces at your own table, the hunger that gnaws at you all, and you know what this means. More mouths to feed, more lives to keep warm, yet you cannot turn them away. Neighbors are not strangers on the prairie. Neighbors are the difference between life and death. That night, as the storm begins again, you lie awake, listening to the fire crackle and the soft breaths of more bodies in the cabin. The space feels smaller, the air heavier, yet the silence of absence has been replaced by the murmur of life. The neighbors have returned, not strong, not whole, but alive, and in this winter, that is enough. Their presence is both burden and blessing, a reminder that survival here is never solitary. It is shared, stitched together from hunger, hope, and the stubborn will of those who refuse to vanish into the snow. It comes quietly, almost without notice. At first, you think the sound is a trick of the wind, a faint dripping, irregular and soft. But when you step outside, boots sinking into the crust of snow, you hear it clearly. Water. The icicles that have hung from the eaves all winter long now weep in thin streams, dripping steadily into the drifts below. The first thaw has begun. The air feels different too, still cold but softer, no longer biting at your skin with the same sharp teeth. The wind carries with it the smell of damp earth, faint but undeniable, a reminder that the ground beneath the snow still lives. You lift your face to the sun, pale though it is, and for the first time in months it warms your cheek instead of stinging it. The children rush to the door, quilts still draped around their shoulders, pointing at the water running down the cabin walls. They laugh a sound so rare it startles you, watching droplets sparkle in the light as they fall. They press their fingers into the snow near the eaves, scooping handfuls of wet slush, marveling at the change. Their eyes shine, brighter than they have all winter, their hollow faces softened by hope. You walk to the creek, cautious, boots breaking through the softened crust with every step. The path is messy now, churned by melt and mud. At the bend, the ice that held the water captive has cracked. A dark ribbon of liquid runs through, narrow but swift, its voice bubbling faintly as it hurries past. You crouch low, dipping your hand into it, the cold shocking but alive. You drink, and it tastes fresh, sharper than melted snow, carrying with it the promise of spring. Back at the barn, the animals stir more eagerly, stamping hooves against wet straw. They sense it too, the shift, the loosening of winter's grip. You scatter what little feed you have left, and they eat with more vigor than days before. Even their breaths seem lighter, the frost around their muzzles melting into droplets that cling and fall. The cabin itself changes. The frost that once curled along the windows retreats, leaving glass clear enough to see the horizon. The roof, which groaned under snow's weight, drips steadily now, streams running down its slope. You gather the water in buckets, setting them beneath the eaves, thankful for every drop that saves you from swinging the axe at the frozen creek. Yet with the thaw comes unease. The snow softens, yes, but beneath it lies mud, hunger, and weakness. The land is not yet green, the fields are not yet ready. Winter does not surrender in a single day, it retreats step by step, and even as you watch the water flow, you know the cold may return before spring claims victory. Still, hope takes root in you as stubbornly as the grass that will soon push through the black soil. The thaw is proof that winter cannot last forever, no matter how deep its silence, no matter how sharp its teeth. The first thaw is not warmth, it is not plenty, it is not safety, but it is change, and on the prairie, change is life. You return to the cabin with wet boots and a lighter heart, carrying with you the sound of water dripping steady from the eaves, a rhythm that whispers of survival moving toward something more. The thaw deepens, and each day the prairie reveals more of itself. Snow shrinks into rivulets that run quick and brown through the yard. The fences rise again from their white burial, their rails wet and gleaming in the Sunday. The barn doors open easier, no longer frozen in place, and the animals stumble out, blinking in the light. Yet even as the land loosens its grip, winter lingers in your mind. The memory of it clings like smoke in the rafters, heavy and unwilling to leave. You sit by the hearth, the fire now small, burning more for comfort than survival. The children's faces glow rosier, their laughter returning in cautious bursts, but in their eyes you still see the shadows winter carved. They have learned hunger, the kind that silences play and sharpens glances at empty shelves. They have learned cold, the kind that creeps into bones and settles there, long after the sun has risen. These lessons will not fade with the snow. You step outside, boots sinking into mud where drifts once lay. The fields stretch wide, bare but waiting. Soon the soil will soften, and seed will meet earth again. Yet you cannot look upon them without remembering their silence, how they lay lifeless beneath frost, offering nothing, answering nothing, only holding still while you prayed for change. The memory of that silence weighs as much as any harvest. In the distance, smoke curls from neighbors' chimneys. You had feared them gone, their cabins swallowed by storms, but now they stir once more. Still, their faces are gaunt, their steps slow, their voices quiet when they call greetings across the thaw. Each house carries its own story of loss, of hunger, of nights spent listening for wolves or storms or the rattle of coughs in the dark. You see in them the same truth you feel within yourself. Survival leaves marks. The memory of winter is not just in the land but in the body. Your hands bear it, the blisters hardened into scars from swinging the axe against frozen wood. Your back carries it, muscles aching with the weight of snow shoveled from the roof. Your stomach remembers it, the hollowness of broth too thin, the taste of ashes chewed when nothing else remained. And your heart carries it most of all, the weight of worry, the endless watchfulness, the prayers whispered at dawn, hoping to see another day. Yet memory, heavy as it is, becomes something else with time. It is warning, yes, but also proof. Proof that you endured, that the cabin held, that the fire returned even when it faltered, that the children still breathe beneath their quilts. The memory of winter will not leave you, but perhaps it should not. It sharpens gratitude for the smallest things, the drip of water from the eaves, the smell of damp soil, the sound of birds returning to the thawed trees. As evening falls, you sit once more by the hearth, the light outside soft and gold. The cabin is quiet, but not with the silence of fear, only the calm of rest. Winter has passed, yet its shadow remains, a reminder that the prairie tests without mercy. Still, the memory of winter does not break you. It binds you to the land, to the fire, to the fragile strength of survival. And as the night deepens, you breathe easier, knowing that memory will guide you when the cold comes again.